so much easier. I just totally lost last time.
I don't have any microphone. Does anybody else have a microphone on?
I just shut it off. It was me.
Hey, Lee. Peter, we've got some feedback.
Yeah, Charles, it looks like it's actually
Yes, that's
your
you.
computer microphone is on.
So right here. You're turning your mic off.
I mean, I've got it muted here.
That's your sound. You need to mute your mic.
Okay, this is it, right?
That's better. I think we got it. Can you hear us better, Dave?
Yeah, I can still hear you. Yeah.
Age well. No.
Is it all?
It's the capital A, capital W. 2002. Let's look at it here real quick.
2002.
Okay.
Well, looks right.
And with COVID.
I want to accept that.
We're okay. Wow. You kept me honest.
We're at the written now. That's the password.
Okay.
Everybody good?
Yeah.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you so much for your.
You know where I am, Charles. Come get me if you need.
Okay, will do. Okay, everybody, it's 3 p.m. on Charles Toxey, Chair East Sound Planning Review Committee. Will bring this meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. First off, let's see. Does anybody have any agenda additions or modifications? No, let's see. You had wanted us to,
I was just talking about for future agendas.
for future agendas.
Yeah.
Okay, okay,
Just a good idea. What
okay.
my comment to Charles was that we ought to highlight items that need to be reported back or followed up on.
Kind of think his, you want to do that in his,
In the agenda.
or in the chair's report or something?
No, in the agenda,
In the agenda.
just to put us on notice for the next meeting.
Yeah,
And the thing specifically I talked about was the stuff about the trails. Is that right? In the last agenda.
Yeah.
Which we are going to work on.
right.
Okay, great.
Okay, great. So let's see, two things. Cindy Wolf has shared that she's in another meeting and is going to get here as soon as she can. So so the council update will probably need to be postponed a little bit, and we can move forward with an update from Dave Williams, who is under the weather, and we're very sorry to hear that.
So we're glad to see you.
Thank you so much for joining us remotely. That's wonderful. So next up on our agenda is approval of minutes. We have 2 sets of minutes to approve. Did anybody have any additions or alterations they'd like to make for our last 2 meetings in April?
I move that we accept both minutes for the last 2.
Second.
Great. Okay. Wonderful. And next up is public comment. And would anyone like to say anything during the public comment? Okay. We had expected Gulliver to be here, and he was going to comment about a concern that he had over a project which we have an updated permit on at the end of our agenda today. So maybe when we get to that, he will have arrived and we can have a bigger discussion about that. Okay, so skipping over the council update from Cindy Wolf, Dave, could you give us an update?
You bet. I'm going to give a quick update, kind of what I did for our council earlier this week. I wanted to walk through kind of some permitting numbers and stuff that we just put together. So bear with me while I share my screen here.
Yeah, I think Dave can do that himself. Dave, can you give yourself full screen? Because right now you're sharing with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be able to full screen it here in just a minute as soon as I choose the window that I need. But I'm having to work since I'm remote, I'm having to work on the web-based app side, not the full version. So there we go. Okay, so you guys should see a PowerPoint up in front of you right now. Does everybody see that?
Yeah, yes, we can see it. Thanks.
Okay, great. So we did this as a quick update to council. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but I wanted to go through some numbers. One of the things that we're seeing, this is the way reporting has been done previously for the department. And basically it comes down to a permit total number. And that's based on submittals to the system. And then we broke it down further just from the number of homes that have come into the system. So what we found, and as I said, this is the way it's been done since 2018. What we found is that with our new system, SmartGov, we're having a tremendous amount of permits get canceled. And a part of this is an issue, a disconnect that is occurring between the system and the user. So we have people coming in and in some cases they're putting in 4 permits for a single house because they're starting the permit one day and our system is creating that permit. So even if they didn't have an intent to hit the submit button, the system is still tracking that. So the next day, maybe they come in and they add some more information. That's created as a new permit. The third day they come in, they get everything finished. And then the 4th day they hit enter. We now have 4 permits that have been created that staff are having to chase back and forth to get correct information. So this is the way the system and the reporting has been done in the past. I don't find that to be accurate. What we want to look at, and I'm going to jump ahead here just a little bit, is the building permits issued. So these are the permits that have gone through the whole system, and I'm just speaking about building permits here, but you can see the growth trend that we have had over the last several years. So just looking at the trend line there, we're going to be way above this year on the 2023 estimate for the trend line based on number of building permits that are coming in the front door. But more importantly, the 2023 year to date, we have already issued 44% of the permits total that we issued last year. And we're only 33%, a third of the way through the year so far. So despite the fact we're a third of the year, we're almost half the permits we issued last year alone. The permitting activity is continuing to increase rapidly. And what we're seeing here is our turnaround time is also decreasing overall. We did have a spike here. If we look at the trends on turnaround times, 2015, right here in the middle, that was when the critical areas ordinance and the SMP went into effect. 2019 is when SmartGov went into effect. And if you take a look at this, SmartGov, our turnaround time was almost 300 days to turn permits around. And we did that at only about 40 or so permits, house permits being processed during that time frame. Right now, I'm estimating we're going to do 140 house permits. We'll be doing almost 600 regular building permits this year. And while the numbers have trended up, the curve itself is actually flattening. We're actually getting things turned around faster right now than we have previously. So we've seen this trend tick up, but we've got a high permitting volume. And in the last 18 months, we've only added one position to the department. So the process improvements, everything I've been doing on the back end to try to help this is working its way through the system right now. And we're seeing those improvements overall. So I'm very happy about that. Land use permits, when we talk about the land use permits, and this, by the way, does not include the building permits that the land use department also has to look at. So when we look at that 595 permits estimated for this year, that's on top of the 308 permits that they have to look at. So they're still doing a tremendous amount of work. But in 2022, we still had vacation rentals in the mix. So we had 319 permits last year, but we were also doing vacation rentals at the same time for vacation rentals that were not within the UGAs. So I think we're very much on par to continue with what we did last year, and may surpass what we did last year once we get through and actually do a vacation rental lottery this year. So that's just some of the data I wanted to kind of walk through. The other thing I wanted to walk through is some statistical information, which is fascinating. When we look at permits within the county, right now, 56% of the lots in San Juan County are encumbered by critical areas somehow. 30% are in, and there go my dogs. 30% are in frequently flooded areas. We have 47% of the lots that have wetlands on them. 60% of the lots in the county have federal wildlife habitat areas on them. And then we have 25% with possible archaeology. So when we look at the development of the county, there are no easy lots to build on. Almost every lot that we look at is encumbered in some form or another by these critical areas. The other thing I wanted to point out real quick is the building codes. When we talk building codes, I think it gets lost in translation quite a bit. These are the 48 different code sets that the state of Washington requires that we follow, in addition to the federal ADA standards and fair housing design manuals. So when we look at building codes, it's not just a simple IBC, IRC answer. There's a tremendous amount of building code out there that we're responsible for. So I just kind of wanted to put that information out there. I'm happy to answer any questions anybody has on any of this, but I just wanted to do kind of a quick update overall with the briefing that I did to council earlier this week.
Dave, when you said that it's an additional 308 land use permits on top of the building permits.
Yes.
What is the lead time in terms of number of days for land permits, land use only?
We have to break those down individually. And I don't have a specific answer for you today because each one of those land use permits follows a different track. In other words, a plat requires a different processing timeline, different requirements than a shoreline tree removal permit, very different than a boundary line modification, very different than an ADU, accessory dwelling unit eligibility. When we look at the land use, they run very different tracks. This also includes all of the SEPAs. So we have to then look at the state guidelines related to SEPA, the processing times on those. And the land use permits are the ones where we have the most difficulty getting all of the information to be able to make a legally based decision for permitting, because that involves the wetland reports, critical areas, archaeology. It involves all of those aspects as well. So there is no set time as much as we could put one out there for the building permits, for instance.
Thanks.
And one thing, I was just to say, the one thing I will note is those timeframes include the turnaround time of getting information back from customers. So when we come in and we do an initial review, within the first 28 days. We provide 90 days for somebody to respond to those comments. We could be waiting 3 months for them to get information back to us just to say the application is complete in order to move forward with the review. And then if we have issues during that review, we're still waiting for architects to get back to us or engineers to get back to us with clarifications or additional information that's identified through the review process. So that total turnaround includes the applicant side of the equation as well.
Great. And you and I had a very brief conversation about tree law, and you had mentioned that that's something that your office is going to discuss and come forth at some future date with an update on.
Yes. I'd like to put something together midsummer on that we can do a formalized training for everybody on that. That's something that I could not throw together in just a few days. It is an incredibly complex network of requirements, both at the county level and the state level, and significant integration between state and county requirements as far as what you have to do, what you can remove, what you can't remove, reforestation requirements, mitigation requirements, everything else. The state really views ownership of trees as state assets. So you almost have to look at tree removal from the point of view of the state, that this is a commodity that the state has a very significant vested interest in. So, but I'd like to put something together here in a couple of months for that and see if we can't get DNR to the table to join us for that. And we've got flow charts that the department's working on. We've got the state one put together completely. We're working on the county one right now, and I'd like to have all that information put together so we can have a discussion following the flow chart of information through.
Well, EPRC would be very interested in knowing what can be done, whether it's at a county level or in our plan for protecting certain trees. There are only people that are particularly important to anyone, but so any information around how that, so that we can understand what the law is and what we're allowed to do, and then, put that into our, into our regulations. That would be very
Absolutely.
Okay. Anybody else have any?
I just had one question, Dave. And I was just wondering, you mentioned previously that the CAO was going to get updated this year. I was wondering if you had any kind of an update on your update.
We are still working behind the scenes right now. I've got a second RFP out for a consultant for assistance on that particular project. We've pushed our initial deadline back 3 months. So we're looking end of first quarter of next year now for completion of that, because we got no response from the initial round of the RFP. So we've changed the scope. We've removed the dollar cap on it. And I'm hoping this go around I can get some responses from everybody on the RFP. But right now we're looking for help desperately on that document.
Okay. Thank
Sorry,
you.
which document was that? I'm sorry.
The critical area.
Critical areas ordinance. Yeah. We will be updating the public participation plan with council probably at the end of this month on that, just to tweak deadlines on it, change a few little things in it. But, if I can get a consultant on board, I'll have a better idea what the overall scope and timeline looks like. But right now, we just we're running pretty lean on staffing.
Okay.
Great. And Dave, any update on the formation of an east-south parking committee?
Nothing. Until I can get the critical areas ordinance up, that is the priority for the department right now. As soon as I can get that up and running, then I'm going to be looking at East Sound parking. We do have a $50,000 grant from LTAC to move forward with that, but I don't have staff to take that project on at all. So as soon as we get some additional help, we'll be able to move that one forward.
Is that, yeah, so in terms of the 50,000, is that's planned to be going to an outside consultant, right?
That's planned for whatever we need for it. So I'm hoping we can get some consultancy help on the project to be able to just truly hand it off, at least for a large portion of it, let them run forward and then just manage the public process on the back end, but get them engaged. Right now, it's the lower priority of the two projects right now.
Dave, does that have to be used within a certain amount of time?
Yes, it does. I've got to get that burned out by the end of the year. So I'm hoping we can get it moving forward pretty quick here. But as I said, the critical areas ordinance is our most pressing issue at the moment.
Dave, is that specifically for parking in East Sound?
It's actually the LTAC money. They wanted us to look a little broader than just East Sound. East Sound is the primary, but they wanted us to take a look at some other concepts that may be transferable over into the other communities. They wanted us to look at the bike lanes. They wanted us to look at bike charging, alternate modes of transportation a little bit. That was some of the earmarks that were tied to that LTAC money. But I'm hoping we can take a model that works for East Sound and move that same model over to Lopez or the outskirts of Friday Harbor, that's our area, and kind of apply that same methodology to those. So
There was a lot of things in that, and it's in our.
Okay, Dave, since you began presenting, Gulliver Rankin has arrived, and I'm wondering if you would be willing to.
absolutely.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. So this is public comment. We're revisiting public comment, and Gulliver, we'd love to hear your.
Okay,
comments.
great. Are we limited to 3 minutes?
No, you're not.
Okay. So can I ask a question of clarification on your presentation, David?
Yes.
The building permits that you're issuing, have you separated out the mechanical from the full SFR permits? Because looking at the chart, the department, it seems like 50% of the permits are like a lot of solar permits that are getting processed, which I am in support of. But I'm just wondering how many of those numbers are specifically remodels or building versus the permits for solar installations and single trade mechanical.
Okay. I did not break it down for this particular analysis. We are going to look at that for future analysis for the next quarter. The other thing we're going to do is overlay the specific permits, especially on the housing side and the ADU side, very specifically with the critical areas to show that, this permit for this house, we have, say, 20% of our house permits have 2 or 3 critical areas involved in them, or 1, or how that breaks down. But we'll be doing a more detailed analysis. SmartGov, our computer system, is lacking at best when it comes to extraction of data out of it. Anecdotally, I can say 20 to 25% of those permits, total permits, are single family residential. And that would include manufactured, single family site built, and owner builder permits. But that's pretty typical within the industry. About 20 to 25% of your permits are that. The mechanicals, they're being issued quickly. Most of the mechanicals, unless we need information, they're being issued within a day or 2 or up to a week. But unless we need specific information, we're expediting the low-hanging fruit, the easy permits.
Does that go for like garages and decks and that kind of thing too?
Garages and decks, yes and no. Depends. A deck over 30 inches requires structural engineering per the building code, and garages, it depends how it's being built, whether it's being built by a professional, whether it's being built as an owner exempt structure, and whether or not it triggers engineering requirements or not. There's a lot of variables there when we start talking about garages and decks.
And what's the fastest way to get through your department to build a garage?
A quality submittal right at the onset. Get the information into us early. We're happy to sit down at the front counter, walk through everything that we're going to need with everybody. Make sure you're not near any wetlands. Make sure there's no archaeology. Make sure there's no other encumbrances on the property. But quality submittal is the biggest thing.
Does that go for owner builder as well as contractor?
Yes, it does. It does. We have to have the basis for a permit, the documents submitted have to be of such quality that we can make a legal determination that what is being built is allowed in compliance with the codes. And back of a napkin doesn't work. IOU doesn't work. We get IOUs for IOU, a wetland report. We get those submitted for people. That becomes an incomplete submittal, unfortunately. So the more detail up front, the better off it is. We're not having to ask for additional information. Our goal is to get it through on the first go around.
Okay, Gulliver.
Yeah, so thanks for the clarification on that. what I was coming to is the citizen access time, which I emailed to Sophia, is that I'm hoping that EPRC can step up and take over the streetscape plan and sort of put out a basic plan for the rest of, going up School Road, down Madrone, now especially with the new 45+ unit development, right, that Westcorp is talking about up there. I know in my history here, the individual development trying to put the curb gutter and sidewalk in has been challenging. When Odie and Trina did the liquor store, we were asking for months and years for the curb gutter and sidewalk elevations from Public Works, which was the reason people couldn't install. So now we have our permit of this, we'll get to the permit review later. This is Erin Timmons. She just bought the corner property there, school in Prune Alley. And so now, as part of helping with all of this, like we put together the East Sound Sub-Area Plan checklist that the department uses as part of their intake for some of the peculiar permitting specific to East Sound, whether it's got to go through the plans review, if it's a commercial property, et cetera. One of the things we just got tripped over with here is the request from your department, David, for a civil engineer to stamp the sidewalk.
Yes.
Gutter area,
Yes.
which I feel should be led by EPRC and the community in planning what they want to see, how many parking places and whatnot, and then put through Public Works for the engineering, with the individual clients just agreeing to, ideally one of 3 options for like on-street parking, just sidewalk and planting, screening. But this seems like a higher burden again to development for individuals. And given my track record and experience here, we spent 2 years developing the streetscape plan for Prune Alley. That's not developed. It got shelved. All of the easements were lost. So I have a little bad feelings from that, of terms of when we've asked property owners to come up and participate, change. So I guess I don't trust that going through and having the extra cost for the civil engineering here seems beyond what the individual property owner should do, and should be more of a collective thing. So I guess if this is a new requirement, I would like it put on the sub-area plan checklist, because now 5 months into our permit, we get this requirement, and it's going to be a month, 2 months to get a civil engineer to come back. So I do agree with you, David, that the applications should be complete. And as the latter more report kind of laid out, you have a very good website. It needs updating, but you give good examples of what they want. This just seems to be one of those holes, as I don't know if it's a new requirement. I haven't gotten a return call from Public Works specifically for this. But so for the citizen access time, I'm hoping that EPRC could take the lead in this. Public Works can do the engineering, and then the citizens can just pay in and do the development. I know Susan Mustard had a lot of challenges with Public Works and getting the grades and things in there for her project up on Madrone Street. And that's one that still has above and below to tie in with the grades. So if we come to the permit review, I could go over some of the specific concerns about this section of sidewalk, but just from a general note. So thank you for your time.
Not a problem. If I could address a couple of those things. We are prohibited from doing design work as a department. That's not our mandate. It's not our mission. We are prohibited from that. Any improvements in a public right-of-way, the national standard is that they must be designed by a civil engineer. So that's what Public Works is requiring for that. We can't accept improvements that aren't designed to that standard. And you can thank insurance for that. If an injury or something like that were to occur and it's determined that it was not designed by an engineer, county starts writing very large checks. So does the property owner. Everybody starts running into issues with that, unfortunately. So it's not uncommon. I've actually never seen a project in the public right-of-way that was done by anyone who was not a civil engineer. So I can't speak for what Public Works is requiring. I understand why they are requiring that. I don't know if there's a collaborative approach that Colin may be willing to take on in the Public Works side, but from the department's point of view and the code's point of view, any improvements in the right of way have to be stamped by a civil engineer.
Okay, so you said that the county is prohibited from doing any design. Is that gonna affect your LTAC grants for like the complete streets? Because this seems like this would be under the purview of
No.
like street plan of sidewalk, and we've got the gutter to allow for biking, or we have an actual parking. So you're saying that
It does not, no, it does not impact that. Where we run into an issue here is we have a gifting of funds, a gifting of resources, because it is for the benefit of a private property owner. Even though it's right of way, it is still for the benefit of that individual. We cannot gift funds or gift services in that regard. But the county has also been in litigation when people in my department before me have gone through and designed things or made changes to projects that was outside of their scope because they thought it was the right thing to do, and then later failed. So we're a regulatory body. We're not a design body. We try to provide as much help as we can, but at the end of the day, we can't make that final design, final approval. Someone else has to finish that off. The LTAC money that Public Works gets to design those streetscapes, that is conceptual in nature for the most part. The final drawings would still have to be stamped by an engineer. But I think it's a good discussion to have with Public Works to see if they're willing to look at a model where maybe they could provide some of that engineering services, you know, to try to find a balance there on a generic basis to say, this is this cross section, this is the design standard, please use this to avoid some of that design cost. But that's not something that I can make a decision on in my department. That would be a Colin decision.
we had those in the original sub-area plan, but I believe that got supplemented now with some of this. So do the people who just benefited from the Prune Alley development, are they going to get charged so that it isn't a free gift for that design? Or how
No.
did you do it?
Prune Alley was for a benefit of the entire community. It was a benefit of the entire road section and the transportation network, as opposed to just one property owner's frontage very specifically, and then the work, the design as well, how that integrates into their property.
What's the minimum? I'm just trying to think, like, because ideally we'd like to try and take a street by street approach. So if it's School Road, that's got the school on one side, which declined to participate in the streetscape this last roundabout. There's Nelson has one property there, there's yours, and then Aldort. So that's 4 there. Does it need to have more than 4?
Gilbert, it's interesting that you bring that up because last month we had a presentation by Public Works, Colin Hunter, about some funding that our county was offered for a project, and the project that they brought up was a school road project.
Yes.
That's still in preliminary design phase, and they don't have it. I don't think they have a set streetscape, but they had a pretty good concept.
Had a concept.
Yeah.
Good concept.
And it pretty much it's going to run the length of School Road, both sides.
Okay.
However, the map that we were shown ended at the end of the school property, the corner. So I'm not quite sure, what that last 100 feet is to the intersection. That wasn't on the map that we were shown. Have you seen that by any chance?
No, because the Public Works document just went up to the corner and then Nelson's there.
Right.
Nelson's property there. So that's
the map that we were shown goes to the corner of Nelson, where Nelson.
But I don't think it did on the south side,
no.
which is your corner that
Right.
you're talking about. I think it was only on the north side.
So I guess this just brings back to, like, if this plan's going on and then we have a couple people make an individual plan, the group plan's going to trump it. So again, I'd like to, well, and I guess we could get to the resolution later, but what I would like to see is for us to bond or allow, the streetscape improvements to happen, but decouple that from issuing our building permit and demo. Because when we requested that, they said, no, we can't do that.
Mhm.
That's where it feels like we're getting tripped right when we thought we got everything done, we're moving along. So
So.
do we have a bigger?
So, well, part of it is that what we've been trying to do, we said 6 months ago that when we were talking about streetscapes, that we can't just have one set of standards for all the streets because each street is very different. And so we have been trying to be able to look at those streetscapes and get Public Works to be able to come to our meetings, but that has been restricted. Colin did come last month, but it was basically for the school to explain the school. But I mean, I agree with you completely. We've been trying and trying to get a streetscape for all those different streets. And so I can certainly understand your frustration.
But it seems like they should all be, they're all linked. They should be knitted
Yeah.
together. It's
So-
like veins in your body.
So-
They all need to like
Yeah.
circulate and be.
A little history,
cohesive.
before the Prune Alley project was funded and put through, the decision was to create a streetscape for every street in Village Commercial and even part of Village Residential Institutional. And that anyone who developed or improved a site more than a certain number of dollars would build to that streetscape standard. And that's why, and so you did that at the liquor store and that's happened with Susan Mustard and other places. But then when Prune Alley was approved, they went ahead and did it because it was, they had many more things they needed to deal with, storm water and such. So that was a public good taking precedent over the individual development. But I believe that there is a streetscape standard for School Road. And I think absolutely you should ask Colin Huntemer if that is in place and still active, and if the school's traffic project would impact that in any way. And if there is an impact, then possibly, I don't know if it's a huge chance, but there's a small chance that this might get developed at the same time that project happens.
There should be a streetscape.
There should be a street.
Do we have a record of those? Because going back, and this is going back, gosh, 3 or 4 years now.
Yeah.
When we all approved and I think agreed with Public Works on a set of streetscape standards for everything in town.
We
We
did.
did, but it was street by street.
It was street by
Yeah.
street. And basically it said, these streets need to have sidewalks, these do not. And I'm not sure. I don't think there was much more to it. And it was generic.
It was pretty generic, but then after that was when we decided that we were trying to develop where we could work with Public Works, because there was some differences in, some have a park by them, so maybe parking is more important than the green space and that, and so
that's still
but
unresolved.
It is.
I didn't bring my own.
EPRC did just submit 2 suggested streetscapes for the what is that?
The head of North Beach Road.
The curve, the Victory Hill curve, and then just north of there on North Beach Road. We believe that there were some unique situations.
It's listed as one of the entrances to town,
Right.
which did not save any of the trees that WaFd cut down when they come in there.
You're talking about further north, but
Right in there, so
that's another issue.
But we're really, there's School Road and Madrone Street. Those are really the only ones that still need streetscape improvements in the village core, right? Madrone Street has a full stormwater upgrade that needs to be done on it. And School Road needs to be extended. They actually stopped right at Ms. Timmons' property, and I believe that there's more work that needs to be done underground before we could even complete our above ground sidewalk area. So it seems like we should have a further conversation of how best to fund and develop a streetscape for School Road.
Yeah.
I mean, we're just gonna, could cut and paste from the existing prune alley,
Well,
turning
especially.
around. We have a driveway cut and,
Well, yeah, I certainly would, if I were in your position, I would want to see a streetscape for School Road before you hired a civil engineer.
Right, but the other thing is that original streetscape that we had for that, I think it's gonna be impacted by the school project. So,
So I will take on contacting Colin Huntemer and presenting these facts as I understand them, and I'll copy you on that, Gulliver.
great.
And then let's hope that will get the conversation rolling. And what I hope is that the first thing that can happen is that we can look at the School Road streetscape as it exists and get an answer from Colin of, will that change based on the school's traffic routing project?
Well, going further than that, I would suggest that as a follow-up, as they develop final plans for the School Road project, that they extend the engineering to include your property. And, so you'll have the engineering done, approved. Now, you don't want to wait for a permit.
And they should be able to bond
But-
for it.
Bond or
Right.
simply pay into the school
Right.
project, that the county should do it all.
Which is why Gulliver is advocating for decoupling those two things. So
Yeah.
as just a layperson here, and I
Yeah.
appreciate so much what you all do, because like next level, whew, I don't know what you do, it's crazy. But just as a layperson who's also
Yeah.
going to be writing checks and who's been trying to realize and manifest this house for a year and a half, 2 years.
yeah,
It feels like at the 11th hour when it came through, I was like, what? And I don't even know what that looks like. And also I have a limited budget and what's that gonna do? So just as a lay person, just being, understanding and trying to understand, which I probably never will, all these processes. The one thing that made sense to me was, again, this advocacy for just detach those two things so that we can start building the house, and then I'm happy to have a wonderful sidewalk, or I'm happy with no sidewalk. There's no sidewalk on one side and there's sidewalk on one side. It's kind of this weird situation.
yeah.
And I'm happy to do all of that. Like, I am for it. It's
Yeah.
great. And it is good for the property. It's good for the community. Everybody can walk in a continuous
Yeah.
area. I want it to be safe, all the things that we all want, right? But I will say, can we just
Yeah.
get started? Can we just get started building?
So Dave, is there any wiggle room there, or how does this procedure? What can you tell us about that request?
It's going to have to be driven by Public Works. I cannot decouple the right of way from the project right now, the right of way improvements on that, because the code unfortunately marries the two of those things completely together. So it's got to be driven by Public Works. They've got to be willing to step up to say, hey, let's split it off and we have this plan. I don't know that I would do bonding on it. I would probably do cash in lieu if the county was going to take some of that on in the design cost to do that. Bonding can be problematic from a governmental point of view to recoup money if we have to on that. But, that's something that unfortunately Colin has to drive that ship a little bit, whether he's willing to decouple that or not.
Thank you
Okay.
guys for
Great.
hearing.
I'm not averse to it at all. it's not my decision. So.
Okay. Very good. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you so
Very,
much
very
for your comments. Okay, so since Cindy is, and Dave, did you have anything else that you wanted to?
And
No, I don't really have anything else unless anybody had questions on any statistics or anything. Cindy did text me. She was just leaving Lopez about 10 minutes ago, coming back to Orcas. She said maybe an hour to get in there for the meeting. So I don't know if she's on the county boat or the Tilly or what that looks like right now.
Gulliver, I think it would be good for you to look at the 1830 700 street development standards in the sub area and letter E as in Edward.
Mhm.
I think that's very pertinent.
Now, are these ones that you've just updated?
No,
No.
these are,
Okay.
these are the,
We haven't
these are the
updated
old,
that.
this is the
Right,
old code.
which the architect had and had on sort of the plan. But now to go to, so what information can we provide a civil engineer, since there's one on board here that can tell us, that's gonna get us the results we need? If you say, give us this, a driveway and an elevation, you could start at this point, but right, if the water's gotta kind of flow
Pretty
down.
much have to build to what is there right now.
Cause it's,
And you have
okay,
to, and you have, if you're gonna build right now, boom, stamp it.
Yeah.
And then when somebody comes along and changes it, then it's on them to fix it.
cause we've got the
It's not
sidewalk.
on you to fix it.
Okay, because we've got the sidewalk points where they ended here with all these elevations. I do remember something about the final road maybe being a little off from the elevations or a little higher. I don't know. If you didn't hear anything back on that, then we could trust that these were there.
You're not talking about the intersection,
Yes,
the raised intersection?
so this is up at the top of Prune Alley and School Road in North Beach.
Right,
So that's where we're starting.
right,
So all the existing grades come up about 18 inches there.
right.
And I just don't know, I know at some point during the plan, the grades seem to be higher than they first had calculated, or I know they're going back and forth.
One thing this paragraph in the
Uh-huh.
code really places emphasis on public works.
Mhm.
Which,
It really,
which the statement is, if Public Works has not completed a design for the street or cannot furnish the necessary information, the improvement shall not be required until such time as Public Works has established the necessary grades and design standards for the required improvements.
Okay, so
That
how
seems
do
like
we
it should be
find
required.
and the design standards, is it a loop? Is it refer back to itself?
It should be street specific and it'll be identified by, the streetscape.
'Cause I don't remember it being that detailed. Maybe I've got an old copy, but,
Okay.
this was from 2016.
16,
okay, that was my last year. So
yeah,
that's
it
just after.
was, 250, I think it was redone in.
Okay,
250.
so.
And in there are the options for how
Yeah.
the right of way, whether it's a 30-foot right of way or what, or if it's a
Mhm.
50-foot right of way. So
That's all already surveyed. So, and does the current Prune Alley streetscape meet those? Because we were gonna just match what's around the corner. To me, the driveway cuts are really tight,
yes.
right? And I tried you were walking down Prune Alley there, I was gonna pull over and get your number, and I could not park. There was 2 spots, but I had my truck and with just a single parking thing, it was really frustrating. So the loss of 19 parking places we lost in that streetscape.
up for you.
Just- Okay, sorry, just to say that there was a change from when we had designed it to this one and a loss of parking, and yet all of our meetings, everybody was complaining about parking. So there's some disconnect that happened again in this other design.
And some of that all had to do with some of those property owners that we had
Agreements.
agreements with.
And lawsuits.
There's a couple of those properties that were sold 3 times during this
And
process.
Public Works was given the challenge. They said, no, don't do the plan that you worked on with Fred Klein
Yeah,
and all those guys. Don't do that. Do this because this requires no change in right of way. You don't have to, they don't have to acquire any right of way. Just do it. And so you're right. They kicked parking down the road.
I know. Well,
And then we also had to do driveways. There were
Extra driveway
2 or
cuts.
3 driveways that eliminated 2 or 3 parking places because the people wanted a driveway, which they had the legal right to have, but they didn't want one in the plan that you were involved in, or in the other original.
right. Well, all I'm saying is
Yeah,
that I
I
don't
know.
think that Prune Alley to now matches that so well.
Yeah.
But so again, we're like, which do you want? And if we do have time going forward to, as Aaron said, decouple the building
Right.
and the sidewalk improvements.
Yeah.
Maybe we can,
Yeah.
get up to the stop sign.
Well, that verbiage helps you in that respect. And so I think that, but it seems like
Okay.
all roads are pointing to Colin.
We'll talk to Colin because I want to know about the extension of the
Well, then I
line.
also think the the school project is
Right.
also going to help.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Gulliver Collins should also have the as-bills for Boone Alley. So the correct elevations.
From final, once they were done,
And
yeah.
you actually could get those on the Public Works site. If you go to projects, all of those,
I had the full plan originally, but I'm saying I don't know if it's been amended.
no, but this is you can actually see the as-bills.
Okay,
You can access those under county projects. And then it'll say Prunalia. It used to be on the top, but now it's been completed, so it's
Right.
probably a couple,
Well-
3 down. But that shows all of the as-bills.
okay. Well, it seems like Colin is really the next person in this
Yes.
chain to figure out how best to go forward with this part. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank you,
thanks.
Christine.
Keep you guys.
Okay, and now if,
I got one more.
oh, okay, go ahead, Scott.
So, leading up to losing 12 to 19, whatever it is, whatever the number is, you heard on parking spaces. Last summer, there was 2 local private citizens that donated their lot and access to and all that for parking, to no cost to the county, no benefit to themselves. It was just strictly for the county. They're doing it again this summer. Does that LTAC money or any other money like that, can they apply for something, for some help on the cost that they're incurring for providing public parking that the county won't do?
That's unfortunately not a decision I can make. That has to be a council decision as far as allocation of any funds to rent a parking lot or to do anything like that. I'm happy to hear they're looking to do that, because that's not what I had heard from them at the end of the season last year, is that they weren't interested in doing that again. But that would have to be expenditure of funds like that would have to be from the council on some type of a lease agreement, but nothing I could recommend or nothing I can control from my seat.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, well, thank you. Let's move to the next item, which is an update from East Sound Water Users Association General Manager Dan Burke. Yes. You may, you can stand, you can sit, you can. Yeah.
I just had back surgery, so I'm gonna stand.
Okay, great.
Thank you all for having me here.
Thank you for coming.
And thanks for being here. I was thinking about it. I guess I took over right at the beginning of COVID, so I haven't had a chance to meet with you all through that period. I'm pretty busy with the sound water stuff, and so it's nice to be here. And as from the East Sound Water standpoint, prior to that, just a little bit of history for me. I've only been here since 2011, and I guess I moved here when I got out of college. The internet was starting up, so I was involved with that for about 20 years. And San Francisco, and so I moved here from San Francisco. I started consulting from here, and then I couldn't get online, and I started asking around about getting on, which there wasn't much of. And I ended up falling into Rock Island, working with a startup team, and then after 5 years of that, I ended up over in East Sound Water, and so I wandered into the utility space, and I love it. I think it's a fantastic way to serve the community. And East Sound Water, with about 70 years of history, was just an amazing foundation to build from. I wouldn't have taken the job if it wasn't in the shape it was in. It had just a ton of really good bones. And so in the past couple of years, we've been doing I think some of the takeaways and some of the elements that I was able to bring to East Sound Water piece of statistical analysis. And the question I had was, what are we working with here? And how viable is this for the future? And so we took a different look. And I guess for full disclosure, we have 2 board members here. Scott and Clyde are both East Sound Water board members, and we've just had a great time working on the water equation for the island. And there was two main problems to solve that I heard when I was in the interview process and talking to Paul. And that was that it was really tough to get employees. And that was the first big challenge, people to stay, enough people, and then to keep those people. And then the second was, once you keep those people, how do you keep a roof over their heads? And so over the past 2 years, we've been working on trying to solve a lot of different components, but those are the big equations for me for longevity. And so we came up with a strategy that if we just had more people and created a great place for people to work, that we'll be able to get a critical mass that would help us weather the storms. And we have a pretty specialized industry. You know, it takes quite a bit of time to get certified, like a lot of our other utilities. We're really niche, and so once I started meeting with the water system in the community, I started hearing a lot of the same themes. Everyone that had been involved in water were aging out and wanting to retire. We were probably 20 years past wanting to retire at that point. And so we had to solve these problems. And so we went after that in somewhat of a creative way. We entered into looking at more ways to bring revenue in that wasn't just affecting our ratepayers. And so we came up with a strategy to hire out labor for management and essentially trading extended duties for additional bodies. And so we were able to double our staff of water workers. And so what we started doing was taking on just the management components of Doe Bay and Volga, and then finally Washington Water. And what we found is we've been able to extend our employees, keep our rates the same, and then what's the byproduct of that has really been an excitement of a team. So the benefits of a team building, there's the camaraderie, but there's also I need a weekend off. There's the benefits of a lifestyle. And I noticed that lifestyle of prior generations was a stress. People not able to take a weekend, not knowing what the word weekend meant anymore. And so I think one of the biggest reports I would say is that we're on the verge of solving a pretty difficult equation that, in my mind, will spell longevity here. And the management of these third-party systems are really strong for us because it's the benefits of the revenue, but none of the burden of the capital. And so it's really great. The worry that I think that the board and myself had was infrastructure, labor, regulation, local, state, we have ecology, we have state health, everything seems to be getting more intense, taking longer, more dialogue, more regulations to be aware of and then comply to. And we deal with 35 miles of infrastructure pipe in West East Sound. We have 5 wells in the water treatment system. Very expensive, very big plant. And so does all these small water systems. And so we're trying to figure out how to deal with providing water, keeping the systems current. And so what we didn't want to do was increase the rates as much as possible. And so the strategy that we still have a very favorable rate. On the average, we're about 30% less than the country average for water. That's a really great story for us. And in terms of water and how much water is on the island, what I learned when I first came in is that was a complicated question. And so me and the board spent a lot of time. What I did was pull a bunch of records and did statistical analysis on what the volume is currently. Our water rights are in great shape, but the water volume and water production is actually wild. It's a lot of water here. For us, we are continuing to plan for the next 20 years, 30 years. We are almost complete with a water system plan that's required under the state That is out online right now if you want to see it, eastsoundwater.com/WSP. And that outlined our strategy towards being able to provide water to our service area for the long term. Most notably, we have a well that we're in the permitting process right now. It's right across from the medical center. And that's a well that's been hanging around for 20 years or so. And it has the ability, provided that we make it through permitting and get everything done correctly, to double the volume of water that we produce here on the island. So currently, I would estimate we have about 4 times what we currently use, and this will allow us to double that. So the headroom for connection and water availability within the UGA and other areas of the island within our service areas is good. We have a bright future there. Every once in a while we get people calling concerned about us running out of water, and that absolutely has been part of the history here. But the future is very much one filled with water. So that's a little bit about our strategy in terms of what we're doing today. But the second part of that is one that I think is a good success is we started amassing employees, and then some of these employees started losing their housing. And so we too were looking at the housing epidemic that seems to be going around, and it took us about a year to analyze the properties that we had and the opportunities that were laying around. And what we came up with was a really, I would think, lucky situation. We just happened to be able to use some of our land assets and sell them and buy ourselves a property that we were able to use for employee housing. We're currently housing 40% of our staff, and that's a while. And the housing conditions are great, they're sustainable. And so that's a really nice win for us in terms of longevity. What I like about this business, it isn't, where I come from, you have like 18 months is about as long term as it used to take. And what's great about this position is we get to think about it for the years. And so in that mindset, we have a very promising future, kind of on all fronts right now. And so what I want to do today is just kind of say hi, introduce myself, take a look at some of the good news, and answer any questions that you had.
I've got several.
Okay.
One is, when you were talking about putting the new well online and increasing capacity, does that mean that would there still be the need to tap Day Lake or water at the end of the summer, or would there be enough aquifer flow that you wouldn't need to do that anymore? Pretty late.
Question related to that.
Did you want me to jump onto that?
We just got a geological, USGS study back on where the water comes from. And it's mostly relatively shallow fractures in the bedrock. So I'm kind of wondering where this expectation is coming from, that you would perpetually have enough water out of those aquifers to be able to supply water indefinitely.
Yeah, it's probably hard to understand if you're not living the day to day. But we have basically most of our wells in the island are rock wells, or cracks where people go and sit there, 8 gallons a minute. A lucky shot in the ground. If you've ever drilled wells, it's hit and miss. Sometimes you get one, sometimes you don't. And I've had that experience with a 20 GPM well 10 feet away. It's wild. What the current well, so tying those two together, the well that we're using now is actually not in the rock well. So if you just took a look at the existing well at the high school, that already produces a massive amount of volume. And because that's in a sand and gravel type of base. So if you take a look at the east sound, we have these 2 mountains, and then we have the sediment in between. This is the good stuff. We have wells on both edges of those, and it's not that great. In the middle is where all the water is. The water runs down both of those roads and creates a beautiful pile for us to sit on. So the logic is not a guess, it's fact. It's the school well the thing that shows us that we're in the right spot. And we have a good relationship with the school well. And we're working on all sorts of stuff with the center of that being the production source.
Monitoring too, but we changed how we monitor it.
Yeah, so let me go back to this. So water strategy, it's how you deal with it. Cool. There's redundancy, there's redundancy of kind, then there's redundancy of different kinds. And so what I see is we have about 80% of our current production can be handled in the valley through wells, and about 80% can be handled solely from the lake if you want to. So the Venn diagram is what if your well gets contaminated like nitrates, nitrate scared 20 years ago or something. But the why, then what do we do? When is the backup? So the lake is really important for us as an alternative source if anything ever goes wrong. Remember, our aquifer is shared with other homeowner wells. Whatever people do with those straws into the aquifer, which is what the state and ecology want to manage that with us in partnership with us. And so I think that while it'd be tempting to say volume is just the thing on its own, it really has to be put in place with a strategy. Here's a good example. While we have this lake source and this well source, we're in a bind where we can't really build our lake source treatment facility because it supplies between 20 and a little bit more or less depending on the time of year of the need. And so we can't really take that offline currently. So this well that we're putting in gives us the headroom to take a breath, rebuild that structure, and upgrade it. It's in need of an upgrade. And then come back down, and now we have two really good sources that are able to produce a lot of water on demand. So strategies, I think they always will all change based on how much information. Like that new report might drive us a different direction. But there's pluses and minuses with both sources, both in the treatment, the taste, the amount of attention they need. And so we have a complicated ecosystem.
So when the permitting and everything gets taken care of and that other well gets on, that's when you're going to be able to upgrade Purdue Lake. Isn't there's a huge water tank on Buck that feeds from Purdue Lake, right?
Well,
Or is that
let's
too?
talk water strategy here. You guys got a good one? So we have about 1 million gallons. I want to think 1 million gallons would last. If you get
3 days.
2.5 days. So we can always use more storage, but there's a thing about freshness with water too. So
About what?
freshness,
Okay.
age, turnover, and you get byproducts of age too long.
Yeah.
It's complicated stuff. It's really fascinating and fun as well. But the storage at the bottom of the mountain is not exclusive to pretty low water source. It's actually small sources.
Okay.
So we learned last month that 2018 FEMA maps show flooding of the north end of the airport area. And we had a planner tree here to let us know that the freshwater wetland mitigation project that the airport had undergone had already been inundated with salt water. And so I'm just wondering what are, in terms of risks for the other wells, are there risks of saltwater intrusion?
So if you look at the elevation of that, every single wells, especially our wells, we're up out of really one of those danger zones. Our lowest well, we're going to abandon as soon as we get this new one online. So we're kind of retreating a little bit with our production well, getting into higher elevations and having a strategy for increasing water levels for whatever reason. We see no improvement on any of those wells of salt water. And so we're probably just gonna be really ahead of the curve when it comes to mitigating the water intrusion. My understanding around the island is just where we started to see some intrusion in some Regis wells that are really close to shoreline. So I've only heard that through rumor, and it's one or two that they're watching for intrusion.
What's the location of the well that you're gonna abandon?
Well, so if you take a look at Nina Lane, coming down off, trying to down Nina Lane, you have a well there that we used as really just a peak summer backup.
Uh-huh.
And I'm hoping that we can just avoid using that by the game this book called Clark Well. Clark Well is the new well. You guys just had a chance to look at the building structure.
I have a question about the new well. Do you already, I know water rights can be finicky and challenging. So has that process already been, where are you at with that process?
Long done. We were established 20 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, the great thing is the well and our ownership of it has been in play for a long time. And so right now it's just simply a building process, which is really helpful. Yeah. Yeah,
Okay, so where's the new well?
right across from the mountain.
Right across the, okay,
Yeah.
I just want to make sure it's not next to the fire station.
I have maps of the geologic survey and some of the recharge areas that you're
Yeah,
interested
we
in.
haven't seen any
Um,
PFAS.
And Orcas is a little bit more of a bowl, whereas like Lopez is all glacial till, so there isn't anything holding the salt water back except the fresh water. So we've got much more of an issue here. I think outside of the UGA, someone can drill a private well and still, if I understand, withdraw 5,000 gallons a day by state law. I don't know if designating the whole county a critical aquifer recharge area limited that, but that was always one of the concerns, is somebody else deciding to do a big agriculture or something and limiting the groundwater. Second, or as the question is the Nina Lane property still cited for a desal plant, or is that now not feasible and we can do it within?
No, yeah, we don't have any plans to do desalinization.
Okay, so that's not of the last, that was a previous 5-year plan or two.
Yeah.
And then what about re-injecting into the Eastside aquifer some of the post-treatment sewage water?
Well, let me tell you, so if you don't know what you're doing, you should learn what you're doing. So what we're doing is we're dropping data collectors in all of our wells so when Paul did this maybe 10, 15 years ago.
Correct, there was
it
that Blanchard well,
It was put it in and come back and get it later and put it in dot matrix and have it do its thing. Now we have technology that's all connected to you. We get real-time data collection of our aquifer levels. And so we started a study. We're 5 into 12 total wells that we're gonna, if we go back to the valley, what we're gonna try to do is that the central aquifer that's in our service area, we have transducers that we're trying to spread out through the entire aquifer and take opinion out and let data rule. So the thing about those transducers is the value isn't when they go in, it's the value over time. And so what we're doing is starting a program to collect in perpetuity, so that, let's say we get into a situation where PFAS is in the aquifer and we have all sorts of or the actual table is dropping over time, then we can make some different decisions. So I would think that doing some sort of recharge program that may cost a million bucks would be premature to understanding what's actually happening. We've had transducers in the ground for 18 months and we're not seeing anything but elevation. So I just think that the jury's out, and as long as we have data collected, that we're all going to be a lot wiser when the time comes to make those types of decisions.
Is there a long-term trend for greater precipitation?
I don't control that.
Oh, I know you don't control it. I'm just wondering if you look at the last 10 years, just climate change and such, are we getting a rainier?
The thing that I know to do is just collect information again and take the opinion out. And so we have rain buckets that are tied to, that we're collecting our own rain.
Yeah.
Close to those sources where we're capturing the aquifer charge. And then we're able to run that data against the weather data and see how we fit into the mix. And we understand how water moves in the aquifer, and it kind of moves this way through town. What we don't know is how it floats up and down seasonally, and how kind of what you brought in is how is there a correlation between rainfall and the aquifer, and if so, what is the gap between rainfall and charge? So once we understand all those dynamics, we'll be able to write a prescription on how to manage water here. I really see that, within a year or two, we'll probably be able to start to see what the future looks like here. And of course, in 10 years, we'll be in great shape.
Great. So Gilbert brought up an interesting point, and that's about the legality of private wells. What are the laws around that? What can people not do, and what can they do, and where can they do it?
The Department of Ecology is in charge of that, and just like private homeowners, we all take our charges from them. So I don't know what they're obligated to do. What I know is that within our service area, we have the right to not allow someone to do any private wells, and because our aquifer is different than other aquifers, it's up to ecology to make a decision based on that. So we really have no opinion on that.
So in the East Sound service area, you don't allow private wells.
Pretty rarely.
New, right?
Yeah, there are existing wells out there, and we get asked to drill wells, and we just address each thing as they come. All situations have a lot involved to analyze, not unlike some of the other discussions.
But in general, those are not allowed.
In general, yeah, you can say that, but there are exceptions.
Okay.
I've got one more out there. So that's fascinating that you're actually managing these other outlying systems. So in the past, there was concern about on-site septic system nitrate contamination of soils over time. Are you seeing that? Are you monitoring anything?
Yeah, we tested. We're not seeing anything.
So even with increased development, the new septic standards and designs that are going out there are
effective.
Once he's in charge, we're gonna have safe water.
Yeah.
You're talking about outlying systems though, right? Where it's rural and it's on septic and.
Yeah, but a lot of people have a group water and individual septic.
Right.
Bay, Olga,
Yeah,
all
that's
those.
what I was-
So I can jump in on this just a little bit. I'm the general manager of the sewer and water district here.
Okay.
Actually, I was just reading about this. In the 1970s, 1976, actually, we started talking about it because the EPA came in and said, you got to do something different because you're going to destroy your aquifer with increased nitrates and nitrites. And there were a lot of really good people back in the day that made very good conscious decisions, and we created a ULID for this area, specifically right here in the basin that Dan's been talking about. And by doing that, we know, and luckily we're monitoring it still, which is something we need to continue to do as a community. Luckily now, because we have a centralized treatment system for our sewer, we're not contaminating. We don't see any nitrates or nitrites in the year 2023. It would not have been like that if we would have continued on the path we were on in the mid 70s. So we developed a treatment facility in the very early 80s, and we went on in 81. And that's why we don't see the nitrates and nitrites in the aquifer. So a little history there.
Thank you for that. That's great. And then the other systems, Gulliver, you mentioned, they're all surface. So we actually have, if you look at the whole island, you can almost say that the right side of the island has more water than they know what to do. They have more rights than they know what to do. They can process more water than they know what to do. The left side of the island is dry as a bone, well-based, community well-based. Struggles with this work. That's kind of the theme that we're seeing. So, Go Bay just updid their plant. They can provide a amazing amount of water out of that facility with very little maintenance, and that's Mountain Lake water. Olga has an aging plant that still produces a pretty wild amount of water, Mountain Lake water. Rosario is also a surface water plant. They pull a Cascade Lake. They can produce an incredible amount of water. And so we're hybrid. And as we go towards the west, you'll see that dotted individual small groups, West Beach, all that kind of just water go out all the way to the west. You'll see that stuff. So if those are group Bs, these group Bs have a whole different regulatory set of rules than we do. Did you have another question?
Oh, yeah, Cindy.
Yeah, pervious surfaces. So aquifer recharge, are you, when you're putting together this picture of East Sound 10 to 20 years from now, is that part of it?
It's not.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I just wrote this plan, so I can tell you that we didn't address that. What we addressed more is leveraging the data from the findings of the EPRC work and the county's work on the UGA. And so I think that we're leveraging existing data more than anything. That's probably the best way I think I can articulate that.
I was just thinking in terms of making good policy for development for the UGA. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question.
I think that would be a bigger issue in expansion and maintaining Buck Park and some of those other higher recharge areas that, serve as purpose. Seems like a lot of the water is coming down Buck Mountain, right? And going into the aquifer and flowing around and out Terrell Beach.
And out here too. Backside. That is also, there's a lot of love.
Well, Dan, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You just kind of touched on it real quick, but one thing that Clarkwell is gonna do is the plant at the lake is 34 years old. I mean, and previous, no longer employed at East Sound Water kind of cobbled it the whole thing together and kept it all cobbled together for a long period of time. And parts are almost virtually can't get, it's getting harder and harder to get the repair parts on that. So the board was facing, how are we going to, where we're gonna get the money to redo that plant up there, keep it online and everything else? Well, as Dan alluded to, and it's at least $1 million. And that's early dollar, $2 million, and it could be even more. And keep in mind, we're a membership-based organization, so it means the members are gonna pay for it whenever that happens. What this has done is taken some of that pressure off of that. Once we get this Clark well online, taking some of the pressure off of that, we can start addressing that. Maybe not as a big a scale, but that's still to be argued.
Thank you.
It's great news.
Dan?
I think that's everything. Thank you so much, Dan. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay. Would you like to give us a council update?
Thank you.
I just was out looking at fish habitat, so entirely unprepared to do so. Yeah.
Tell us about fish habitat.
Yeah, fish habitat. The fish, every year, the MRC, the Marine Resources Committee, applies for, or they participate in deciding region-wide what the grants are going to be in the Puget Sound Partnership region. And they also, so there's proposals that come from kind of one end of it, and then there's approval that comes from another end of that. And we went out today to look at 3 proposed projects for funding through the states for next year. And we've really shifted emphasis from, there's, in a lot of the region, there's a lot of emphasis on river restorations. And of course, we don't have that here. And what our ecological niche really is we are where the salmon come to eat, where the juveniles come to eat. And so where we need to put our money and our effort is in near shore and beach, like, by the way, and forage fish, spawning beach restoration. And so we went out and looked at one site on Orcas and 2 sites on Lopez that are especially promising places where if we removed armor, we might be able to get more in terms of sand lance and smelt. So, particularly sand lance. So, and we had the review board out to look at that as well. So that's where I was today.
Okay. Let's see, there was one thing from the last meeting, and you may or may not have any update on it, but it was about Andrea Cohen's questions about signage at the road end of North Beach Road. And I think that you were gonna talk to the environmental stewardship group about possible signage or something like that.
Colin does the signage.
Yeah, but I think that you were gonna talk to the environmental stewardship people about, because Colin was like, I'll put whatever sign you want.
Right. Yeah, Colin has the road ends and then, and environmental stewardship does the, yeah.
Isn't your land bank signs? I mean,
Well, she liked that sign.
She would like similar
Yeah.
signs.
The style.
Right, and what were they gonna say?
Well, I think it was gonna be a, please take care of this, this habitat.
Right.
And no fires and no garbage and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And that sort of thing.
So that's, that was the reason I was gonna talk to environmental stewardship was because this tourism master plan is coming out. And they're the ones who are shepherding that. And so that's the kind of thing that would be a really good part of that. So thank you for reminding me of that.
Sure. Okay,
Yeah,
great.
and there's gonna be a council meeting on Orcas on Tuesday, June 13th. It will be from 5 o'clock till 7:30 p.m. And it will be in the Madrona room of the Center for the Arts.
Orcas Center.
Orcas Center. And so it's June 13, 5 to
7:30.
5 to 7:30.
And it'll be a regular council meeting. So far on my draft agenda, I've got a number of things. So if there are suggestions, happy to take them into consideration. I thought that the Orcas Center for the Arts would be a good place because we are right now in the process of setting up this arts commission we've been talking about, the County Arts Commission. And so having a second touch at that. And also there is a new 0.1% sales tax for the arts that the legislature authorized counties to take if we wish to. And so it is a matter of, we're going to start talking about that. We'll probably bring that up at the council meeting on May 16th. Talk about whether that's, whether council's even remotely interested, and then talk about it again on June 13th. I know there's an evening event, I believe, here on Orcas on May 16th at the Center for the Arts, where there will be a presentation on that. And then we can consider whether that's something that is better suited for the ballot or whether it is something that the community would rather just see pass through council. So, okay.
Interesting. What, I'm not knowing the amount of sales tax that goes through, what kind of numbers would that generate?
0.1% right now. I think you've got a mental health tax that does 0.1%, and that is, it generates right around $600,000 to $800,000 per year. So.
Okay, thank you.
A lot of money.
That is a lot of money.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you very much. Let's move on to permit review. So there's a revised plan for the Pine Street cottages. This is so satisfying that this has come back to us because The original plan, which Sophia included, in the permit, showed the basically, about a 25-foot driveway, no hammerhead, and one parking space. And this revised, plan has pretty much the same amount of space. It separates the parking into 3 areas, adds a parking space and a standard driveway. So it's really nice to see this change, and no change in the square footage of the building.
Can you share screen?
Let me see if I can. Just one second.
Did David?
I don't know.
Cindy, can you do it on that little, who's up there for share screen? Do you know?
Don't make it complicated. I was just
No,
curious.
well,
No, we should
oh,
go
there's
see.
David.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm bringing it up in the background as we speak.
We usually bring, we just have had some technical problems as of late.
Come on. Okay. Can everybody see my screen now?
Oh, excellent.
Okay. So, yep. Okay, so we should have it up right now. What is it we're wanting to look at?
Well, so that's perfect right there, Dave.
Yeah.
So it's I guess maybe could you also bring up the previous design just for reference? It's the second link. Agenda.
Do they have a stamped design we could look at, make sure we get our details? Civil engineering plan, do you know, for the parking?
Don't know. No.
They don't always send us.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not included there.
Okay, that's perfect, Dave. Thank you.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah, there we go.
So that was the previous design, and in the upper right-hand corner, you can see the 3 parking spaces. And our concern was that, East Sound for as long as I can remember and long before that, we've been trying to pursue situations where cars don't back out onto busy roads or over sidewalks as well. Thank you. And so this design did have cars crossing the crosswalk, parking, and then having to back up over that sidewalk and into the street, which has a lot of safety problems. So the new design, which they came up with, has a driveway on the southeast corner. And the 3 units are now in a row at the top of the parcel, the north end of the parcel. And so another parking space was gained, and no more back out parking. So it's just a big win. And not a real increase in design costs either.
Is there a cross-sectional view of these houses?
I don't believe so. There is a significant grade change from one end of the lot to the other. We go from 74 feet in this low right corner down to, I think that says 60, and it's 62.5 feet over here. So there's about an 8-foot drop over roughly a 100-foot run.
I mean, I'm asking if these structures even come close to trying to meet, the architectural standards in East Town.
Mhm.
So are the buildings the same as before? I mean, because we don't have any.
That's a good question. They
Are-
didn't send
Yeah,
elevations.
they-
Yeah.
Well,
And
or roof pitches.
They are too, well, if they are the same, the roof pitch looked to me like 6 on 12.
Yeah.
Has that been updated to include all structures? Because it used to just be commercial.
I'm just asking.
And it was a change of use we had issues
We've
with.
been
It was
trying to
built under
update it
residential and
for
then.
2 years.
Yeah, it's not, well, it's not just commercial, it's commercial and anything that's not single family. So multifamily.
Or meant for like vacation rentals or something.
Would vacation be classified as commercial?
There we
Oh,
go.
it is.
There we go.
Yeah, so these are the original ones. I believe the elevations are the same. I believe he's just recycling the same plans.
Well, just, you just.
Does
logistic-
it describe pitch
Site plan.
or is it, we're just guessing? Because that looks a little less than.
Flat.
That's
Well,
all.
there you go, there you go. It's in the far,
Far right.
slightly to the right. 12, 4
Or
and
12.
412.
So
That's not.
but it's exempt.
So it depends on, so this is what happened the last time
Yeah, so,
with is when they
Sheds.
went.
yeah, so we consider this kind of a loophole.
Yes,
The intent, according to the architects who wrote the design standards, was for the exemption to be for a single building built on a single lot. And what has happened though is that the verbiage that was actually written for the design standards just says single family residence. So what we would like to get changed and put on the docket, unfortunately, that docket request never saw the light of day. But what we're hoping to change when we review the sub-area plan is to put that verbiage in there, that it's for, the exemption is for a single family dwelling on a single
but
parcel.
I thought the reason that it got through before was because the houses, the four were on, he divided that property into 4 things. This is all on one,
Yeah.
this is all on one piece. So it
So what Leith is talking about is Mr. Demerit's other projects on Prune Alley. Let's put a fine point on it. The 4 white buildings with shed roofs.
Yes.
And we went through this with Fishing Alley, the 2 parcels right in town where the upstairs were going to be living quarters. And so they got the low roof pitch. We gave the variance on that because they were going to be full-time rentals and they're commercial.
Right,
So
yeah,
it's,
yeah.
it seems like this could be requested at a 612 and you still wouldn't exceed the building height and it wouldn't change the design substantially.
Do they give a height on that elevation?
I don't know.
So
What I'm just looking at.
Yeah, and it's measured from the uphill side, so.
You're probably right, go.
It's only 2 stories. I would be really surprised if we were at the height limit on this.
But Dan's point, I think, is well taken, that on that slope, the way to measure is going to be important. We should make a note suggesting that the department check the elevations.
Well, the 36-foot limit was because we don't have a ladder truck. So you can't have a building higher than your fire department can go and fight. So you think of, so that's the reason behind it. Now, it can be measured from the high side, not the low side, the 36. But if you're just asking for a little steeper roof, the eve is the same.
My whole question was about the roof, the architectural standards. It
Yeah.
wasn't about the site or anything like
Well,
that.
the code does say the low side very specifically.
These look like about 17 or 18 feet tall.
Like it's,
But
Yeah,
it's 2-story, it's probably good.
yeah, and I still think that we should request that. I mean, these are not on but that's what forced him to divide them the last time. Because they originally
Still
were.
requested.
I don't know if
I
there's
don't
any
know.
interpretation of that. I mean, that's what Sean did, but I haven't ever seen anything in the code that, as you say, that was the architect's interpretation. It was a single residential building. It was not
Yeah, but that's not stated.
I think it would be nice if we just stated, this is the intent, we're looking at trying to do 612. And it appears that it would not be difficult to do, and it would meet the design standards.
And note as well that the EPRC submitted to county, it must be 3 or 4 years ago now,
It's been a post-spring.
a request for, to include and not exempt single-family residential in those design standards.
Nope, I've got no problem with those comments being included in.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any other comments about Pine Street
So
cottages?
you,
Yeah,
Okay, great.
so parking. So I see 3 parking spaces, 2 on the street, which may or may not be his. Don't we need some more parking?
we start with one in there, there's no handicap.
All right.
What is?
We don't need a handicap. We do need to get to 5 total. He is requesting under the donation provision for dedicating right of way, 2 credits for dedicating and improving the right of way for those spaces. So
How is it 5 and not 6?
it's 1.5 per dwelling unit per the code. So it gets us to 4.5 rounded up to 5.
Yeah.
Weird formula for these
Yeah.
small projects.
He's had cars. So he is short on parking then.
Well, if he's
No.
dedicated right of way, then no.
I think it's
Well, 1, 2, 3, he's supposed to have 4.
5, 4, 5
5, 6 on the street.
on the street parking. So,
by donating, he gets the 2 credits.
yeah,
So he's dedicated those,
Right.
but he can't put up a no parking sign there.
yeah.
But he's.
That's one thing that
Which
we
has
should,
been done.
yeah.
frequently.
Well,
Yeah.
finally, that got one.
David, that's one thing that we should really
Yeah.
ask to be spelled out in some sort of form. Maybe it can't be deed restricted, maybe it can. But, as you know, we had a history of people dedicating right of way, which gives them a non-exclusive parking space. And then subsequently, those people have put up signage saying this is private parking, and that is not allowed. But
No, it's not.
anyway, so if we can,
it be in
we'll
the
put some notes in there in the permit that this is non-exclusive parking on the street.
Exactly.
He knows, he just puts the signs up anyway.
was gonna say he's gonna police it. So
Yeah.
have to go around like.
Yeah, it's just, you have to know Uzik's not gonna tell anybody, right?
Well, it was a she.
Yeah, because you can't legally be in your.
Yeah. Then we can't take him down. because it's
But the
on
sign
property.
should not be.
Right,
allowed
so it's
in
a-
that.
Yes.
There's been several.
Would there be a preference with EPRC for that parking to be included on site instead of on the street? He has room to put 2 additional parking spaces next to these other ones and still have the whole site function.
Yeah.
Would there be preference that it be on site versus off site?
That's always our preference.
So where is it, but what's he doing with that space?
I assume it's just going to be landscaping.
Yeah, that's always the point of having the non-exclusive parking for giving right of way is largely to help when there's not enough right of way to have parking, period.
Yeah,
So,
I agree.
so I guess one question is, was there enough room to put the sidewalk and parking spaces on Pine to begin with? And if there is, there's no reason to accept any dedication of right of way. But if there's not enough room, then I guess there's no net loss to us. But of course, it would be our preference to have private parking.
Which one of these, if you even requested one more, which one would you request it to be this one rather than to be?
Well, he has to have a hammerhead, so you can't make it down here. It would have to be one of these.
You've got 2 more.
Yeah.
Would it be our preference though? I mean, what you have essentially then is a parking lot.
Rather than,
It's not as nice as property, people living in the house.
Or the people on the street.
Yeah.
It's vacation. So what's the likelihood
Well,
that people are gonna come in one vehicle?
I would say one, but not two,
Yeah, well,
or not.
I don't know.
I mean, it's
I
an
mean,
aesthetic, it's an
we have-
aesthetic question.
we have a dearth of public parking. So, any result that gives us additional public parking is a benefit. And if, you know, if 1.5 parking spaces is what it should be for a dwelling, then as others have said, you know, there are gonna be people who have more than one vehicle. And if they're taking up an on-street parking space, that's a negative.
So this says turn here.
Yeah, that's a hammerhead to back out of the space and be able to drive out.
So this is gonna be hardscape. Anyway,
Mhm.
it's green space.
Yeah,
So this really could be a parking space.
it is, that is a parking place. That's a parking place. What I was saying is that you can't put a parking space at the end over here because you have to have a hammerhead to be able to turn around.
Okay.
This is on the corner of Pine and Fern,
Huh?
the corner of Pine and Fern, right above from the liquor store.
It's not,
It's
yeah,
behind the,
it's behind
It's
his
right behind-
other 4 units, to the east of his 4 units.
directly behind.
Yeah, so there's one house south of that before you get to the.
Or Rose.
Rose.
By the way, I'll just say for the record that when this comes back to us for a vacation rental permit, I will vote to oppose it.
Well, it's gonna be about 18 years, so.
Yeah.
It's gonna be about 18 years until it's available.
Yeah. It's gonna be for all, Brian.
6 years.
Okay, great. So, I think we can move on. David, if you could pull up,
Be happy
tenant
to.
single family. Oh. Residence.
Excuse me.
So David, this actually brings up an interesting point for us in terms of procedure, and don't know the inner workings of your department, but when this design change, this remodel first came to us, we, you know, made comments, hadn't heard back from it, but then a new design was submitted. And that was something that that Sophia wasn't able to see or determine or search on in the system to show us for permit review. So it just happened to be that that Gulliver had his, you know, had the concerns about the streetscape and stormwater drain that brought it to our attention again. But if you know, if you could look into how changes in design could be rerouted to us, that would be helpful.
No, isn't it a whole new permit?
It's not a whole new permit. It's the same.
It's just a
It's the
revision.
same permit. It's just an additional submittal.
Oh, okay.
So before it was issued, we realized that the house was not going to be remodelable and we had to tear it down and start again.
Mhm. Just turning my camera off. I'm having some bandwidth issues.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so. It's quite a change.
Yes.
No, they're gonna
So
move the house.
Yeah.
You wanna buy the house? You can buy the
so is the footprint, is the
Mr. Brothers will
footprint,
move it for you.
is the footprint roughly the same?
house.
Yes.
Slightly larger. Yeah, I don't have that right in front of me, but mostly the footprint stayed the same, and then just the porch got a little larger, and I think the bedroom pushed out flush with the deck on the south side.
Okay,
So which is already close to the property line. So that was traditionally 2 parcels, was divided, and then the house was sold, but the orchard and all next to it is still a separate parcel, yeah. And I don't know where its parking's gonna be. They left a driveway cut for it, for that other parcel, yeah. On this. So the upper story is a 612, but the lower is not.
And what is the lower?
I think it's
4 and 12.
4 and 12, yeah.
Okay.
And the colors here, are what we're looking at right now, white with a dark window trim and
Warm white, if anyone's specific. That matters. I don't know.
There are thousands of those.
It's not paper white. Like it looks on there. paper
right,
white.
you
That's
know,
very good.
cement board siding and asphalt shingle roof.
So Gulliver, one of the things that we're including, that we've been waiting for council to do, and then because of the comprehensive plan took long, is adopting new lighting for dark sky.
Dark
and
side
stuff.
compliant and yeah.
And downward
Mhm.
facing, so we're always putting that in now, just so hopefully when that goes through, it's basically the same thing as the ordinance for Lopez. So
Mhm.
just so you know when you're picking out your
Well, that
lights.
was a great idea about like step lights.
Yeah.
You know, just-
For the upper porch and things like that, rather than actually an outside light. So currently in the code, your porch lights can't go beyond your property line, right? That's what they're saying, as well as now we're doing for the dark sky, to make sure they don't shine up as well.
Right,
Okay.
and there's a bug thing, it's glare
Backlight, uplight, and glare.
Uh-huh.
BUG, yeah.
rating.
So
It's a
if it's dark skies compliant, then you're golden. You don't have to think of anything else.
Are there multiple like certifications in that? Like LEED or green? I mean, we've used like these Kircher fixtures that are just covered. I don't know if you guys can, you know, select someone's that are good examples or that you're happy with.
If-
That could
If
make.
it says IDA compliant, that's all you need to know.
IDA is-
International Dark Skies.
Okay, that's beautiful. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
I'm
so,
all for
so
the dark
for,
skies.
Yeah.
That's great.
Um,
Stars.
so specifically, like the sidewalk all ends right there, okay? And then traditionally, the stormwater drain crosses from School Road over right there to the corner of the properties and then continues diagonally through Miss Timmons and Joanne's property out to Prune Alley somewhere. So that is the currently functioning stormwater, where the Prune Alley streetscape was going to be connecting into that and directing it down and into the new stormwater system. That hasn't happened. And the only way I can say that I know it hasn't happened is because when we were working with Opalco undergrounding the line through town, so most of the digging work you saw in there was getting the power lines underground and conduit for that. They said, fix the old drain that was intercepted. We didn't get it. So it's still, the stormwater's still running there. So something has to happen on public works side. Hopefully Colin will be able to clarify that in the ground before. And I think one of those things is going to be some sort of a curb drain where they could access that junction and maybe a manhole.
I know they had trouble during Prune Alley construction and they dug up that piece on
Mhm.
3 times. And,
Yes.
I didn't hear the final result, so I was really surprised to hear you say that it was still going diagonally through the property. I thought they fixed that.
What makes me think that they weren't able to make the connection is they said, fix the old pipe. Otherwise, we could have abandoned it. So.
But your design does not interfere with that storm drain, so. you don't
It's
really
outside, it's
worry
in front of that old shed and.
So the only thing is what happens at the curb, basically, for you guys.
Right, it seems like defining the curb of the driveway cut to make sure the public works can say we've got the sight lines set back from corners and everything. And then allowing for the space to do a, compliant, stormwater for, 18300E. And, not stormwater, but, a sidewalk over that stormwater once it's completed. And that's where, I have to work out something so that the county feels like they're going to be able to have us perform our duty and install it if possible. But let's let everything else go go forward with the house construction, because it does seem like there's more to this other plan with the properties up in the school itself.
Yeah.
I do want to compliment the county for working with us and giving us a connection to the stormwater. Because that's such a small lot, it'd be impossible to properly distribute the stormwater on that lot. So they stubbed out a 6-inch drain for us to connect to. So there was coordination there. We got that far. I just don't know what the other end of that.
And where is that connection?
That connection is right at the corner in storm basin number 42. I've got the plans here if you want to see it.
It's right on the corner. Well, I don't know.
Yeah, so it comes in by the
Where's your
top
laser pointer?
left corner there. So and it's down far enough so that the rain leaders and the the footing drains can get into it. So right here, they stub this out. This is for
Okay, great.
So this is the section here we're talking about.
Right.
That we don't know if it's got finished. Anyways,
Okay. All right.
now, I had some concerns about just site safety and everything. I don't know if EPRC has had any input or direction towards that. We've had some other nice projects going on in town. Prescott's with Bluebird Construction is doing the one right next to the old jewelry shop. So he had kind of a blacker fence on that versus just chain link fence versus, I mean, aesthetically, is there any, been people giving any feedback into how this downtown construction has been going?
I haven't.
It's not really our bailiwick.
Yeah.
Oh, you haven't gotten complaints then between this and the construction last summer and?
Well,
I guess if
I've gotten.
as long as you equal what the county did for Prune Alley, I mean, how could anybody argue?
Yeah. No, the only complaints we've had were about aesthetics. Just kidding. That's true. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Scott? Okay,
Be so hard.
yeah,
Checkpoint.
great.
Okay, great, thanks.
Great, thank you. Okay. Okay, so the next order of business is the continued review of the East Sound Sub-area plans and policies documents, goals and policies documents. And so we had a work session the Friday, week and a day after our last regular scheduled EPRC meeting. And then we took all of those notes and Brian and I did a reorder of the goals document. And I think that aside from some formatting issues and numbering issues, we've added a table of contents, which was sorely missing. There were 3 different numbering systems in the old sub-area plan. We're going to have one numbering system. There were 3 sections that referred to parking. We now only have one that refers to parking. And then we added a housing component because surprisingly, there was no commentary about the need for prioritizing housing in East Sound. And so we've added that and we have a version of it. And the last couple of things that we need to nail down are our wish list maps for trails and roads, which we talked briefly about with Colin last month. And essentially, we need to agree on what our trails and roads maps look like, and then submit those to Colin just to make sure that whatever we're describing doesn't run afoul of what Public Works' ideas are for East Sound. So I basically just took pen and ink and drew existing trails and proposed trails on one map, and then proposed roads on another. And I'm sorry I don't have multiple copies of this, but I will let you guys look at them maybe.
It's this one.
This is
So the proposed or
Martell,
the
or the
dotted
dotted ones.
Okay.
yeah.
So.
Yeah.
That's are proposed.
I would recommend extending the proposed all the way up to the corner of Terrell Beach,
Okay.
the trail.
Yeah.
You're talking about the Clifton Beach Trail.
Right.
So there's a bunch of private property up there, as you know. I mean, it's a good idea, but a bunch of driveway, well, good idea. We should put it on the recommendations.
I think they've got the right way to do it.
Try to, oh, really?
I think they do.
There are a lot of people who walk up the country corner.
Yeah,
Just-
that makes sense.
So-
practically.
Yeah, so basically, actually, they have for Katie's, they have into on the other side of the gas station goes into, what's that called? Fern, whatever it is. No, that's whatever that is. So that's a road.
Private home, there's the VFW, there's Shell Station,
Yeah.
and there's Country Corner.
Oh, okay, thank you.
So there's a bunch to do, but it can be done and it should.
So this one, this dotted one over here.
So
So
basically,
this is,
that's-
isn't that
this is-
existing? Oh,
well,
it's just.
it exists, but it's
It's not-
private. It's on
yeah,
private
okay,
property.
All right, all right.
Charles.
Yeah.
Maybe, do you want to kind of enumerate those since these
Sure.
folks can't see it?
Sure.
Describe them.
We
We're
don't.
gonna have a way to do this.
So,
We can pass it around.
Is that taken from the Pathways Committee? Because they had identified all the trails for East Sound in their, I think, 03 design charrette and all.
We're trying to get that.
Maybe one of the binders I've got with Kathy, yeah, it's,
That would be great.
if not, I could, if not provide it today, I can get that. Because that, we had started with some of those and we were building off of that.
yeah, there is a document that's currently in the sub-area plan that shows a lot of trails. The only unfortunate thing is that it also shows proposed roads that are now impossible.
Oh, yeah, that was a really old one.
Yeah.
So no, this is much more recent and they had a big community forum and they asked people where they like to go, where they went to. And so they had existing, easy and like harder trails to put together because of easements. So there's some work already done in identifying. So we gotta find, okay.
Yeah.
For your
Yeah.
information, Oliver, Margaret Payne is trying to reconstitute that committee, and Kathy hopefully will be part of it.
Okay.
And I think she thinks that she has the document.
Hope so. We tried a couple years ago to do that and it ran with me. Dan Christensen at the bike shop is another person who's got a lot of good info and bikes, because he's found ways to bike up the Constitution. Anyway.
Yeah, we should include that.
Yeah.
Good idea.
So essentially, in terms of trails, we've already kind of discussed these with Cindy, but we have this opportunity.
Coming back.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I'm just gonna describe these trails. The one that we prioritized as number one was primarily because Dan with Opalco indicated that Opalco does have a desire, not necessarily prioritized or scheduled, but to bury the power lines from the substation all the way down Lover's Lane.
We would just be replacing existing underground.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Sorry.
Thank you.
I I need to clarify that the transmission line will stay
Okay.
above ground, but we have
Okay.
underground cable that needs to be replaced
I see. Okay.
going down there. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Don't want to give anybody the false impression.
Yeah, thank you, Dan, for clarifying. I appreciate it. So, so that's a project that they could conceivably work in tandem
Yep.
with county public works to put in a trail system, or a trail from at least the substation down to Main Street. And so our proposal was to have that start at Mount Baker at the curve and come all the way down. So if we could work together on that at some future point when funding becomes available, then that would be our number one priority. Our next priority, and certainly very important to a great number of people, is to extend and expand the trail on Crescent Beach so that you could go walk from town pretty much all the way to Country Corner on a public path instead of that 10-inch wide little scary, 2 inches from the road pathway that you have to walk on today. And then we had procured or helped the county procure some funding for a trail on Enchanted Forest from Lover's Lane over to Orion. But then encountered some problems, and that unfortunately the funds that were obtained for that were lost because they weren't able to spend it in a timely fashion. So so there's that section marked as a potential trail. And then also we heard from others that there was a great desire to have a trail that went along Mount Baker west of Lover's Lane up to all of those residences in that area. And then the last section is this little cluster of trails that come from Orion down into the heart of town, hooking up with A Street and then continuing south and going across the, I never know what to call that, the water retention area.
Oh, behind,
swale.
behind it.
Yeah, the swale, but they created that retention pond.
Oh, the
Yeah.
Stormwater treatment.
Stormwater treatment pond.
There you go.
So there are trails on either side of the pond that terminate or go to an informal trail on private property, which is Clyde Duke's property. And then there's also an informal trail from Orion walking down across Clyde Duke's property, which is the athletic center. And then going into the Outlook Inn parking area and down to Main Street. So all of those areas where lots of people walk, it's all on private property. We've gotten indications from Clyde and from April that they're willing to dedicate some right of way for those paths. So we just need to do it. So that takes care of trails. And then for roads, we pretty much have Bartel going to Terrell Beach. I've put a dotted line here for whether that would go through the existing road or south of it because of your input. And then we also have the proposal of having it come down along the east side of,
Weber.
what is it?
Weber.
Weber? Okay, Weber, cutting across on the side of Mount Baker Farm until it terminates.
Never mind. It's Weber. It's
Weber.
It's Weber.
It's Weber. Okay.
That was for a road, not a trail, right?
Right.
Right. And then we also have the proposal, and maybe I should put this on a larger map like this too. I think we need two maps though, because some of this is so tight. But the possibility of having a road from Orion to A Street, and then the possibility of having a roundabout at the end of A Street. So we'll put I'll put those on a bigger map like this. So does anybody have anything else that we should add to our list?
You chose this because this would work.
I didn't choose it. That's already there. A solid line is already there. That's already.
But the blue.
The blue is a path. Yeah, there's a path. Inside of it.
If I say Fern Street, would that bother anybody? No?
No, the connection going through?
Is there going to be I would hope for a paved or hard surface multi-use path.
You're talking about
From
through
North
the
Beach.
Fern Street,
park there between
Yeah,
Fern
Prune and
Street.
North Beach.
right.
Are you,
I don't know what's
are you
there right
talking
now.
North Beach to Madrona Street?
Just North Beach to,
Just a little one block.
right,
Wait a minute.
just the one block, just
On the
between
First Street
North
parcel.
Parcel.
Oh, on the Fern Street
I think
parcel.
there's
This-
some kind of trail there right now, but is it a fully accessible,
That makes sense to
7 foot
me.
wide ADA compliant trail?
You know, because part of the problem with that is I still don't know what they're doing with that parcel.
This would help them decide.
When we wrote that in, one of the things that we wanted to make sure is that food trucks can park there, right? So it could be a lot cheaper. We were hoping that whatever's there is wide enough that like a shuttle bus could pull in on North Beach and exit on Prune Alley. So it'd be a one-way, so you could have someplace for a shuttle bus to stay. And if you wanted, you could have, so maybe make it wide enough for grass paved for a vehicle.
Right.
Something that's good for a wheelchair, but big enough for a vehicle to go through.
Yep.
And
I
maybe
like that.
the food trucks
Why
could
would
be there
they
sometimes.
have to drive through?
Well, just if you were gonna find a bus stop and stop there, you don't wanna back out on the road. So just going through and leaving the other side for the shuttle bus made a lot of
I mean,
sense.
there's a turnaround to block up.
No, but this was a drop off. This was, the reason for
This,
that
the
was.
shuttle bus is normally parked there for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, when people unload, load, and then they leave and go.
Yeah.
So there's, because where's the bus gonna stop in town? There's no bus stop.
Yeah.
This was trying to hold a place for all of these little things that we're not quite ready for yet.
I always like that idea.
So, but I saw they planted some new trees that would prohibit
Right.
an
But
easy
then those trees are
drive-through.
temporary, and I had an idea.
For now.
around those
Fern Street at the end of,
temporary trees.
Yes.
You know, because those trees are too big for that space, and Colin said that we're just, because they didn't go.
where it's right across.
Well, I was walking down here the other day, and when we were talking about, you know, the different trees in front of children's house, you know, putting them in there. I was thinking that out here on this building, on the other side of the path would be a perfect place for those trees. Before they could come in.
On which part? On which part?
Out here, you know, because you've got, where we're talking about like down further, where we wanted to plant trees on the other side of the path, that they would grow up.
Well, let's find out what those trees are though, because it looks like they might have bucked a bunch of trees that are like super vertical, you know, like. That are.
Well,
like-
there's one other
For that,
green.
we're dedicated to a non, we're switching from road.
I just want to say I'm resistant to the idea of putting in a lot more pavement in that,
I always like that.
in that space. I like your idea, Dan, about making it accessible path, but, you know, minimal width.
Yeah, and
Right.
it's when it's a foot.
But see, a multi-use trail is 7 feet.
Yeah.
So that's, you know, you get grant funding for 7 foot wide.
I don't like the
What's
idea
all
of the
included
drive.
in
that they can
bike
make up.
path?
Oh, it was only for like a
Wheelchair.
vehicle, like just a bus, not people. Like, that kind of thing.
It
Has
has
to be something.
even-
Well, let's see if we have a bus at some.
Yeah.
Is there a shuttle again this summer?
Okay, Cindy.
So,
That's a private operation.
okay,
so-
so Cindy, I have a question about our version of the sub-area plan goals document. So, when we were talking about reviewing the document. Dave, or actually, Dave, you're here too, right? So David said, let's not put a version up there with notes until you really know what you want. And so we did post the existing sub-area plan goals document and said, by the way, we're reviewing this right now to the public and make any comments. And then we set up that that email address, which hasn't received any emails. But now we have an edited document, and we just want to make sure that the public has access to it. And what should we do with, first of all, I guess, should we send this to you and Dave and let you look at it and see if you have any questions or concerns?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would go ahead, send it in, and we can take a look at it. Send it to me and Sophia. Certainly Cindy, if she'd like to take a look at it, you can include her in that mix. We can take a look at it from there, provide any feedback to EPRC on it that we have. And then I don't see any reason why it can't be posted on a website as a document for public comment for you, just to see about soliciting comment with regards to that. So.
Are we even at a point yet where, I mean, if we're gonna take it public, it seems like it should be in the papers or something. Not, nobody's gonna look on the website.
Yeah, and I'm trying to balance the staff workload right now versus where we're at on more of an informal, community editing of it. So I wouldn't be putting it out there for a public hearing. I wouldn't be putting it out for that. I would be putting it out just general, questions, comments right now. That would be the tack that I would take at the moment.
So you think we could have a special meeting, an evening special meeting announcing in the paper that we want to have comments on what we've come up with as EPRC for the rest of the public to look at? I mean, I think we need to have a little bit more input before it gets sent to staff.
Well, and just remember, I have very little staff support right now to process anything. The critical areas ordinance and permitting are our priorities. As I mentioned earlier, we don't have the staffing to move forward at the moment with East Sound parking. So I need to balance the priorities here as well. So, if the plan is a priority, then we need to talk with, council and everybody about the parking issue and push that back. If the parking's an issue, then we need to look at moving that forward. But right now, the critical area ordinance is the priority of the department to get moving forward. So,
right. Well, luckily this document isn't very specific because it's goals and policies. Mm-hmm. So, but I know that you had some comments about, how you wanted to see statement of intent and such. So we'd like to know what, in terms of justification, you might need or want, and any other, structural question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's why I said I'm happy to take a look at it. I'm happy to have Sophia take a look at it internally. But once we start talking about public meetings, now we've got to start meeting the GMA requirements for amendments to, the plan, and it does start us down a significant workload road for that. So.
Not right now.
Okay. All right. Well,
we could do another workshop.
Well, I mean,
I think a workshop counts as a public meeting, though.
Yeah.
Well, it's an EPRC meeting.
I think it's a little early, and I'd like to get staff's comments first. Yeah. I think that's useful to us. And Dave, I have another question. This goes to a conversation that Charles and I were having the other day about what's ahead of us, what's our timeline for completing this. And Charles says, well, we have to write all the regs.
No, I didn't say we have to write all the regs. I said that we have to review the regs part of the sub-area plan.
Okay.
Okay.
Which we've pretty much done. But my understanding previously was that was really going to be staff's job, was to take the elements of the sub-area plan and incorporate them into Title 18. Is that right?
It's a combination job.
Okay.
It's both staff and the job of EPRC when we start looking at that. And that's where I'm saying when we get this plan forward, that's where we've got to redo all the regulations. We've got to do everything. That's where the major time commitment is going to come in, is rewriting all of that. And even if we're just editing and, you know, updating, it still is going to take a tremendous amount of staff time, legal resources for review. We've got to, you know, start advertising. We have to do a SEPA on it because the SEPA is required for a non-project plan such as this. It starts us down a significant road.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
don't think there's going to be that much to rewrite or update. There's some stuff, but
Well, we've got, and basically when we submitted those two docket requests, one was lighting, and we've already put that to bed. We know what your plans are for that.
Yeah.
But the other was closing a few loopholes like the one in this design standards. And so we've pretty much gone through it already, but we'll do that with the regs document and next after the goals. And then we'll send that to you as well for you to see. And we know that you guys are going to be the ones that ultimately put wording. But anyway.
Part of it is going to be zoning hearings too, because we're proposing zone changes in several zones within the UGA.
Yeah.
And although there are lots.
Yeah.
Well, and I'll be honest, it may get morphed into the larger 2025 comp plan update. It may be something that when we look at this, we just package this as part of the whole next comp plan, which starts really in January of next year. It may be that we end up just packaging it and as part of that because of those zone changes, you know, all the development regulations we have to do at the same time. It may just be that we end up doing it as a package deal. So we're only doing one SEPA for the entire package. We're only doing one major review on everything, but that may be the better route to go. And then quite frankly, you know, getting into June, July, well, we're almost to June, but July, August of this year, I can go to Commerce and ask for $350,000 of money to help us in these projects with a comp plan. So there's budgeting capacity that's on the horizon that we can look for as well that we don't currently have at the moment. So
yeah, I would just say, Dave, that I would hope that at least some of these changes can happen before the next comp plan comes out, because we are losing land in the UGA, particularly in village commercial and village residential, to single family homes and large lots quickly.
yes, we are.
Housing opportunities are disappearing.
Yes, we are. I would hesitate to do much change at the moment related to density. Anything along those lines. There is some new state laws that have already been signed by Inslee that are going to catch us at this next comprehensive plan update. But one of them is to say you can have 2 ADUs now on a parcel, and those ADUs can now be divided and sold individually. So we're creating ad hoc subdivision or condoization of units. That's something that's coming in. But I'm concerned about how we can calculate density in the UGA now if Inslee just tripled the density in the UGAs based on ADUs. How do we now calculate this looking forward? Does it put us in a position where we can't legally grow the UGA because we have the capacity based on this new law? Or, you know, do we still have the ability to grow in a responsible area? There's a lot of changes coming down the pike from the legislature.
With population numbers as small as ours?
Yes. This bill originally started off for the cities only. And as it went through committee, that got lifted and it applies to everybody. Yeah, we just found out about that one last week. So.
Wow.
I know it significantly changes the overall dynamic of how density is allocated, where it can go, what it can do. And they opened it up to all the UGAs. So regardless of size.
Okay, so I'm hearing some different things from members here, and I want to ask the committee. I hear Leith saying that she would like us to have more community outreach as EPRC before we send what we have to staff. And I hear Brian saying, let's get input from staff now. What does everybody think about this? I mean, are we happy with the state of it now? Do we want to? I mean, we've had public meetings and a few people have shown up and participated.
Well,
But
we had workshops, but they really weren't, we were just trying to muddle through and get through it, you know, to get to a place where we had something to look at. And so, I
Right.
mean, I feel like we're representing the community. We're not, it's just not the five of us making this decision. And
Sure.
so I think we really either need to have our EPRC meeting dedicated to it, or else we could do it as a.
Just to finish it up,
And do you envision that as a, hey, here's what changed, here's what we're
Yeah.
suggesting
I mean,
changes?
I think we need to put it on an overhead projector and
And go
just,
through page by page.
and just say, these are the changes
It's a
and
lot of pages.
this is the goals. I mean,
That's,
this is why we were
yeah,
appointed to this position.
Yeah.
This is what EPRC is.
Well, I think that the issue is one of timing, is what we're seeing. It's timing and it's legal requirements about comp plan. And when these things need to be done and how. And so there is going to be a period where maybe you don't have a lot to do because the department has to be in a position to be able to guide this process through as it's happening. So, you know, if you're making a preliminary plan, then maybe for a while it sits there. And then when the comp plan process picks up again, then you start having EPRC meetings where you're bringing in the public and starting to make changes.
Well, I guess I kind of disagree with that because I think this is just trying to get more input and more information about what this is, and the staff can't do it
Yeah.
now
Well,
anyway. So why can't we do more work?
Is what David's saying, I thought what David was saying was that in order to do this triggers a situation where you have to start looking at a SEPA.
Well, yes, but then that's after we go through this and we do that, then it goes to staff and staff comes back and says exactly what David and what you just said.
Okay, two things. One is that we can get input on proposed edits at any time. If we're not saying this is the new plan, then there's no need for a SEPA.
Okay.
So we can still be airing the, hey, here's what we're thinking about, folks. What does everyone think about this new housing?
So as long as you're clear with the public on what the purpose of the meeting is and what they're going to accomplish by coming to this meeting, right?
And then the other thing is that, you know, we have the right and the duty to submit a new sub-area plan from time to time. And so that doesn't have to happen. We don't have to wait for the next comp plan to submit a change to the sub-area plan. The sub-area plan can be done whenever EPRC thinks it needs to be done. And we waited very patiently through the whole comp plan process. And we're told time and time again that we would get to the sub-area plan when the comp plan was completed. So now the comp plan is completed. And so between now and, you know, in the next year, we need to get this update done, and that's our responsibility.
Well, I just wanted to respond to Leith. To say that I agree completely that, you know, our role is as a public forum and we need to air this with the folks in the Senate and on Orcas. But you know, the information that Dave just gave us is going to be earth-shaking. I mean, if that comes down, that will change our proposals completely. So I think it's a little premature. And I'd like to have staff's read on what we're proposing in the context of the legislation and whatever else is happening.
So, okay. Three thoughts. So these things don't have to be mutually exclusive. Staff can look at what we've worked on so far and can give input. We can have public meetings to talk about it and say, this is not a done deal. We're just, we're suggesting these ideas. And three, we shouldn't be getting so specific in the goals and policies document that we're stipulating what the density should be.
We are though.
Well, but we don't have to. We don't have to do
I
that.
think we should.
So I'm just saying that we can talk about pursuing increased density in these land use designations without specifying what they are. And then when you get to the actual regs, then you can decide how many units per acre will be in village commercial. So that can be constructed in such a way that we don't put ourselves into a bind and say, well, we wanted 12 to the acre here, and now that means that it's 3 times as many because you get 2 ADUs. You need to go. Okay.
David, when does that go into effect?
I believe July 1. I'd have to double check the dates on that. But it doesn't apply to us until our next comprehensive plan cycle. So really, we have to have this all taken into account by July of 2025. So we're 2 years out from having to have something on the books specific to this law change.
Good. So we were bumped 3 years in a row, the last update of the sub-area plan, because the county docket was too full. It wasn't even staff time. It was just, I mean, that was part of staff time of how many things they can review and update. I think that you should write a summary of what your goals are for the changes and why you're doing this. Have staff look at that and put that in the paper, just to sort of tell everybody what's happening. It's been so long since we've updated this. Then have a meeting and links to your website if people want to come and participate further. But I think you should keep going on, get more public input when the staff can come along when they can. But it's not going to be a quick process. Like I said, we were ready to go, and that was after we updated all of the land use tables in there, and that was so many boring meetings. I mean, the public didn't come.
Yeah.
I personally went to the realtors. I did public outreach. So I'm saying, here's what we're doing. Don't come back later and say, I didn't tell you.
Yeah.
So I think that more public outreach is good on all sides for that. They won't find this room. I mean, I had a hard time getting in today, and I was trying to.
Just for your information, Gulliver, most of the changes that we're proposing here were submitted to council 3 years ago. Nothing's happened. So we're experiencing the same thing.
Do you still have the Nelson file, which was the outline dangling changes to the sub-area plan that Jim did back in the 80s? I don't know.
Sorry, but I do.
Okay. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you. And have fun.
So who wants some of my maps and things? The original heart design for the parking in East Sound, or the meetings we had on the housing element for the sub-area plan? I mean, we've got.
I'd like to see those.
I mean, we've gone through, I have a whole binder on the housing. This here specifically is just, here's the one from Fred Klein. Here's our inventory of housing on Orcas. I don't know. I mean, how much paper do you want? This is. So here's one from Fred Klein from John Campbell and an analysis, housing analysis that Opal had done. Like I said, I have a binder on the housing component that we were starting for East Sound Planning. I don't know where that ended up. That would be interesting. But
interesting to see. Okay.
It all disappears after 5 or 6 years. Yep. And the next thing, do you want the heart plan for parking and streetscapes? It's Madrone, it's every street.
Sure.
There you go. This was the one that Renee Bellevue did that was parking maximized, that incentivized us to start our streetscape plan because nobody liked that one. It just looks like a herringbone.
Glad that one didn't get built.
No, but
The heart plan is a good.
the heart plan, huh?
Drawing. That rings the bell.
Oh, here's a better one here.
I'd just like to make a comment. Just think of- Our company works as a team and some smart young person on the team said, okay, when did you come to Orcas? And if we came in 1970s. And we were talking about densities and all this.
What, sorry, what's your company and who are you?
I'm Tracy Betcher with Gen J. And so we came in 1978 and it said, okay, and they were on the computer, they go, there are 4 billion people in the world when you came to Orcas. There's 8 billion people in the world now. It, density doesn't go across the board, but these are really serious issues and planning for it is really important. So I'm glad of what you're doing. I mean, it's great, but we do have to acknowledge that we can't stop growth.
You probably also know from your experience that there's a lot of resistance to that here.
To growth?
To growth and to density.
Oh, yeah.
That's why people come here to get away from that.
Well, that's why the planning to do it in a slow manner.
I think we agree.
Yeah, absolutely. People on board in a slow.
And make it nice, right?
You also aware of the P-star designation in here, which prohibits you from developing your lot under a certain density, right? So there are P-star designations in the sub-area plan currently, which says it's a single family home, but you have to leave space to do that underlying density. So now whether the county is checking that when these permits are going through is another one of those things.
We're another line of defense.
Okay, so that the P-star density, the streetscape plan, the dark star lighting, all of those things, you'll be able to catch.
Well, we hope we can, We're trying.
We're all gonna be turned out.
Yeah, remember, there's no T.
Yeah.
EPRC.
We make recommendations.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, well, I think that we're finished. Does anybody have any other comments about?
We're gonna have a workshop to talk about the plan again. Did you want to do that?
I think we should just schedule more of our next month's meeting for this, and I think we should
Put it up
trust it.
Put it up front this time.
Yeah, we'll make that a priority for the next meeting.
Okay.
And, okay.
I think that whoever suggested, and I can't remember now, is a summary of the changes in the plan. Is a good idea, a good way to communicate it to folks in general. Because right now, this is hard.
It's too much to digest.
We don't want to remember.
Right. Okay. So, I'm gonna take a stab at a summary of changes and I'll send that out. And then before the next meeting, we can talk about how we want to consider public outreach.
Okay.
And then, does anybody have any agenda items for next month's meeting? Anything? That is a full agenda.
I think sub area is full.
Okay,
Fill it up.
well, it's 5:36 and we'll hereby adjourn the EPRC meeting. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. Hope you feel better.
You don't want to stay in it?
I don't know.